In this lesson, we're going to learn something so pivotal that it's going to dynamically change the way that many of our programs are going to work going forward. That is, until now, all the programs we've ever written have simply printed something to the terminal. But it never allowed the user to interact with the terminal itself. It never allowed the user to type something in, for example. That is all going to change now. And we're going to use a concept called Gets.Chomp to accomplish this. I will demonstrate this now. We're going to start out by printing something to the terminal. We'll say, please type something in. On the second line, we're going to create a variable, we'll call it x, and set it to Gets.Chomp. What Gets.Chomp does is it gives a chance for the user to type something in. Whatever it types in then gets stored in the variable on the left-hand side. We're calling the Yoda rule of variables. Whatever appears on the right-hand side of the equal sign gets computed first. So Gets.Chomp first allows the user to type something in. After the user hits enter, whatever the user typed in gets stored in the variable on the left-hand side of the equal sign. In this case, the variable is called x. We will then print out you typed in, and we'll concatenate that with x. Maybe we'll put a colon there. Let's run this program and see it in action. So first the terminal says, please type something in. So let's go ahead and do that. Something. After we hit enter, the terminal then says, you typed in something. So again, on line 1, we simply print out a string, which says, please type something in. On line 2, first we execute Gets.Chomp, which has the program pause and give the chance for the user to actually type something in. Once the user hits enter, whatever the user typed in gets stored in the variable x. And then on line 3, we print to the terminal, you typed in, and we concatenate that with x, which is whatever string the user typed in. Since in the previous lesson we did learn about interpolation, we can also interpolate it rather than concatenate it if we wanted to. So we can say it like this and get the same result. Let's try it again. So the terminal says, please type something in. We'll say hello and hit enter. And it says, you typed in hello. So with either concatenation or interpolation, we end up getting the same result. But as you can see, Gets.Chomp is a crazy thing. It allows a user to type something in, and then our program responds accordingly. Let's make the slightly more complex version of such a program. We'll say, type in your first name. And we'll make a variable called first name that will receive whatever the user types in using Gets.Chomp. We'll then say, type in your middle name. And then make a variable called middle name that will accept and store whatever the user types in next. And finally, type in your last name and make a last name variable that will store in whatever the user types in the third time. And then finally, we'll print to the terminal, your name, or we'll say your full name is, and here we'll use some interpolation. We'll interpolate the first name variable with a space, then interpolate the middle name variable, and then interpolate the last name variable, and put a period. Let's see what happens when we run it. So at this point, the computer ran line 1. It printed type in your first name into the terminal. We're up to line 2 now, where it says first name equals Gets.Chomp. At this point, the computer pauses and allows the user to type something in. So we're going to type in a first name, Ulysses. When we hit enter, the computer stores that in the variable called first name. The computer then moves on to line 3, where it prints out, as we see in the terminal, type in your middle name. We're going to put in S. Once we hit enter, that gets stored in the variable called middle name. The computer then moved on to line 5 and printed, type in your last name in the terminal. And right now we're up to line 6, where it says Gets.Chomp. We're giving the user yet a third opportunity to type something into the terminal. Once we type in Grant and hit enter, the computer now stores that in the last name variable, and then moves on to line 7 and prints to the terminal. Your full name is Ulysses S. Grant because we interpolated those 3 variables. So Gets.Chomp is extremely exciting. Now, this is the first time that we've encountered a period anywhere in our code. So it's Gets.Chomp. For now, I'm leaving off the exact details of why it's actually called Gets.Chomp. We're going to get into that in a future lesson. But for now, just take it at face value that Gets.Chomp is the way to allow a user to type something in. And then, of course, we can store it in variables and then interact with those variables just as we would any other type of variable in any of the software that we write.